quick school improvement update from Conan, Eastover, Lone Pine, and Way Elementary Schools. Welcome to Lester Sharon, Mary Hilberry, Harleen Singh, and Robert Phelps.
Thank you, Board of Education members. We are thrilled that the elementary principals have an opportunity to present to you tonight. Last year, thinking back and reflecting where we were last year at this point in time, the Learning Services team and the Board of Education met to have conversation about bringing back the building presentations to board meetings. We wanted that chance to share the exciting teaching and learning happening at each site with all of the principals, staff, and students, which you don't get to see every day. And I'm excited that you had a little bit of an opportunity last Friday. As we rolled into 21-22 this school year, there was a request that each site present individually and share their connections to our MICIP, our district improvement plan, and then the correlations to our strategic plan and process. As we began our presentations, there was a bit of a change in direction and a shift in our presentations to be more of a data study and a data learning story connected to MICIP, along with an ask that the elementary team present together tonight. The principals have done a wonderful job with their school improvement teams, gathering information for you tonight, and I can't wait for them to share. Part of the purpose tonight is the idea around stories, and that stories can help us make sense of numbers, not only for ourselves, but for others too. It brings a human side to the story. We must acknowledge first that numbers alone are not meaningful enough. If I just said to you, 78% is what matters, well, you would have no idea what 78% means. 78% of what? So, for the purpose of tonight's presentation, to give each building team a chance to present their own data story, they will share their site-level data in literacy and mathematics. They will share their focus and instructional moves related to that data story, as we know the human side matters. Each building has its own unique needs and students. The context they can provide matters, as the data they use will help us make better decisions for our students. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sharon at this time.
Hi, thank you for having us here tonight. I appreciate it. I was going to talk a lot, but Keith reminded me that we're 43 minutes away from the NFL draft. And if I go longer than 5 minutes, I'm in trouble. I'm not sure I won't share with you what he told me my future is tomorrow if I go too long, but, so thanks for having us here. You know, in interest of time, I'm gonna keep my comments about Way truly to what's new. A lot of these slides and data from the past and stuff we've done, we're continue to do, but I wanna focus primarily on the changes that we've done so far this year and our progress and where we're at. And definitely spend a little bit of time about where we need to go in the future, okay? And again, I know you've seen the information and the data that's here. I won't dwell on it too much because you can obviously see where our MICIP scores and other scores are being, so I'll just tell you a little basic, kind of where we're at. One of the takeaways we have from our MSTEP data, obviously, as measured on the NSTEP, which is a criterion reference test at each grade level, we're not seeing the dip that we anticipated we might see due to the pandemic. Matter of fact, the opposite, the numbers are slightly up a little bit. Of course, with the caveat, with a sample size so small, but one of the takeaways for going away is we expected from going to virtual to hybrid to full-time again all last year on March 15th. Our big fear has been that we would start seeing a slight dip in performance or a major dip in performance. That's just, so far, hasn't manifested itself in the data. So that's probably our biggest takeaway. The other takeaway is in reading and mathematics, we're fairly consistent in our numbers, especially our overall numbers and our numbers that we have a high population of students. We have variability in our subgroups, obviously, and I think that's more attributable to the size of the subgroups, the size of the N that we see. It's hard to associate that with any possible trends. But so we're happy with what we see there as far as the impact of the pandemic. But, you know, one of the things that we're spending some time this year talking about at Way, and I think we're talking about it as a team, is there are limitations to this data. The MSTEP does a really nice job, I think, of comparing a district or even a school to like districts and like schools. Schools with our same demographics, our same recourse allocation. Some people call them sister districts, but we talk of assessments in terms of their power and power by decision making. And I think that's fair enough to say that. And I think the MSTEP can also tell us in this analysis what percentage of our students are proficient within the objectives and standards in that grade level in that core. What the MSTEP, you know, where we get on shaky ground is when we start thinking about this data in terms that it's not powerful in that nature for. One of those things, obviously, a big issue that we look at is that if we look at our other data available to us, we have significant populations of students that can exist within these two MSTEP categories that we shared, regardless of their learning rates in the year. And I'll kind of give you an example. We have a student that we have in like our second grade right now, 35% of our students are in the superior range of achievement as measured on FastBridge and mathematics. That's above the 92nd, top 8th percentile, above the 92nd percent. That's remarkable, right? A student can be in second grade for an entire year, right? Test again, maybe not make a year's worth of progress, nowhere near it, but if you test them in the MSTEP, they would still be highly proficient. You wouldn't notice any change, right? We also have students on the other side of the spectrum that maybe are in the bottom 8th percentile or even lower than that, who may have gained more than a year of achievement, but would still be not proficient by the end of the year. There's two types of mistakes that we can make as educators with data. One is we say a treatment, a program, an initiative has had a positive effect when it hasn't, or the inverse of that. We say a treatment has had a positive effect when in fact it doesn't. The data that we're talking about, the MSTEP, doesn't cure us of that issue, but we do have data that does. Previously it was the NWA MAPE data, computer standard basic. Now we're using FastBridge. So our goal really for this year, we began in the fall, it's our first year really giving it, and in the winter data, and tracking students year to year as a cohort and within a year is plotting our students along a distribution, a normative distribution, see where they populate, and see how these students are migrating over time. If our students are migrating towards a higher percentile rate along the distribution, overall as a school or as a grade level, we can say we're actually learning more within a year than the average kid would. We have gap closing type of education. We would be very favorable. Whatever we're attempting to do is having a positive effect. If we see students migrating to the other side of the distribution, I'm sorry, I'm in the inverse here, towards maybe lower on that distribution, we would have concerns about whatever we're doing perhaps is not having the effect that we thought it had. So our goal this year is to start thinking about these students and all of our students along their performance and assessing how well they're learning within that 10-month frame of time of a typical school year as compared to national norms on kids that would grow. Our goal is for every student to have accelerated growth. If we're good at that, and if we come up with the right achievements, our MSTEP schools are going to continue to improve and be better. It'll reflect it in that. But we have to be able to do that with our analysis. So next year, we're hoping when we come back, and hopefully we do it after the spring testing cycle is done, we can start showing you an analysis of that type of data. We just don't have it yet because we haven't given the test yet for the spring. But our goal with data this year is to expand our story, get more deliberate in how we're doing it, more precise, and being able to go back to you. The second piece of this, and one of the things I'll talk about at Way Elementary we're working on, what's the point of having data if you don't have a treatment to assess? So you have to be able to do something, implement a program, enact a curriculum, enact that you then can judge with your baseline data, do we think it's having an effect that's good or bad? If it's having a bad effect, we get rid of it, we try something else, like you would in any profession. If it's working really well, we do it and we continue to do it, right? So that's our goal this year. So our goal at Way Elementary, and I'll talk just about what's new, is that what I wanted to do is I wanted to tie together what we do in school improvement with something that's an initiative in our curriculum. And for us, the only really latest board-approved initiative I've seen is the literacy commitments of 2019. So we took 2 of those, and we said, we're going to implement these literacy commitments together as a team with collective efficacy and with enactment fidelity. That's our goal. We're going to tie in the principal's performance evaluation tool, the teacher's performance evaluation tool and process. We're going to tie in our coaching model. We're going to tie in Kimberly and Todd. We're going to tie everything in together, get all our oars rowing in a direction, and we're really going to do this well. And then we're going to take this data and say, we were successful, we're closing gaps for all of our kids, or we weren't, we better try something else. So my goal this year, as far as our initiative is brand new, is that we go ahead and we try that. What is our capacity as a culture at Way Elementary to actually do that? And we're doing really well with it. It's going great. The teachers are doing a fantastic job, the staff is. We also tied in with our PTO fundraisers, because if you have to support these enactments with materials, and we have wonderful level libraries. We did a fundraiser, got $15,000 for nonfiction text. It texts at all levels, so all these kids have instructional level text that I talked about on this continuum. So that's our treatment for the next 2 or 3 years. That's new at Way Elementary with collective efficacy and enactment fidelity. So that, and again, that's our main focus. Mathematics, we're continuing what we did last year. That's not new. I'll touch on it briefly. We're working on math problem solving and how we're going ahead and adjusting. Our math numbers look really good too. Our math numbers are actually better than our reading numbers right now, which aren't that bad either. But we're looking at the idea of taking those ideas of visible thinking, the Project Zero concepts, and continuing to use them in math word problem solving as well too. It's not as big of a piece of our pie though as that the literacy commitments in that piece. That's our huge piece. So our implications, okay, so I guess I think and again, part of this talk is for all of us, right? So they want to talk about the data. You know, our goal is to continue is to really look at how the migration across that continuum is going to be with the FastBridge data and triangulate it with the F&P data, and really identify what treatments that we can enact that we actually get to measure, right? And we're going to talk a little bit at the end of this presentation about 4 of us coming together, all of our elementaries coming up with these philosophies, being together and doing that. That's it. So that's basically kind of what's new. Our point of prides are still our wonderful point of prides. And of course, what we're doing is our greatest point of pride along with our school improvement plan. So that's it for me. Sorry, how long did I go?
I think 10 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Go talk to Keith.
Thank you for having me. Sorry, could I ask a question?
Of course.
Before we move on? So, thanks so much. That was really
Are we going to
super.
ask questions in between each, all of us, or I'm just curious of the process, because I have some questions too.
Okay, John, how do you want to do this?
Are we going to have individual questions for each school, or can we wait till the end?
We can wait till the end. I have a topic-based question.
Yeah, I apologize. I was almost in my car, Jennifer, sorry.
Let's wait till the end, I think.
Okay.
All right. So Les talked a lot about the purpose of how we utilize data and looking at data in different ways. I think I would also like to add to that when you look at data like we have in these charts here, our MSTEP in particular, that's long cycle data. That's from year to year, right? What we tend to be using more to inform our instructional decision making at the building level is more short cycle data, right? It's running records, it's watching students' reading behaviors, it's looking at their math assessments, it's looking at their reflections on their own growth. So this does tell part of the story. It doesn't tell the whole story. And I think from the standpoint of examining the context for data, know that there's much more that teachers and building administrators are looking at beyond what you see on these charts. And I would also add that I know you guys have had a very rough couple of years at the board table, and so have we at the buildings. It has not only interrupted student experiences in the classroom, but it's also impacted our professional development and rollout of new curriculum. So as we look at these years in particular, you know, the context, the story of the data around it does have implications. We did have a number of kids in the fall of 2020 taking the FastBridge assessment at home, for example. The scores looked very different in some cases with students taking it at home than when they returned to the classroom or before they left. We had students coming in from the M-STEP who had not been in the building in a year and were very anxious. They came in only to take the M-STEP and leave again. And it's really hard as a building principal to not take into consideration the full context of what students were experiencing and what staff were experiencing during these last couple of years of instruction, curricular rollout, professional development. Things like the learning labs for literacy in our classrooms were put on hold because we didn't want large groups of teachers moving into a small classroom confined space with students, even as recently as this fall. So things like that have been delayed. So, as we look at our data, I think it's important for all of us to keep the context in mind as well. However, that doesn't mean we're not still striving to improve. So what we noticed with students coming out of the pandemic, in particular at Lone Pine, was a lot of passivity. A lot of kids had the benefit of having a dedicated adult, which was wonderful. We saw some real improvement in reading, for example, with students who had a lot of adult support at home. But we also saw a lot of students come back who did not know how to solve problems on their own, would quickly say, I need help. I'm not sure how to do this. I don't have a repertoire of strategies. I know how to do this one way. If I got stuck, then I'm stuck, my hand's going up, I'm asking for help, I'm giving up. So we tried to really look for coherence across our goal areas, not only with literacy, but also with mathematics and even with SEL, that students would really start to recultivate a toolkit of problem-solving strategies. So not only their word attack skills, but their math attack skills, their social conflict resolution skills, their ability to believe in themselves and develop confidence around the toolkit that they had to solve problems. So you'll see that articulated in some of the actions taken. As we go forward, we are excited for the rollout of the Phonics Program, for example. Dr. Sharon talked about trying a treatment and doing taking a look at the data before and after the treatment. This is a really exciting one that my teachers are very passionate about. They are really excited to roll out the Phonics Program next year and see a direct impact on learning. And then the other piece that we're looking at really too, and this is a part of not only our observations here at the building level, but also through my work with the National Equity Project and listening to our focus groups and through our empathy interviews, that students who really felt more confident advocating for themselves, asking questions, seeking help from their teachers, were more confident in their feelings about mathematics. And taking that down to the elementary level, what does that look like? How can we intervene at the elementary level well before they get to high school and they're not feeling confident about math? And so part of that was encouraging them to be good questioners, to take ownership of their learning, to set goals, to have a growth mindset, and really feel empowered and having agency over their own learning. So you'll see that goal setting, being involved in developing their own assessments of their own learning, being reflective about their progress, what they did well with, where they think they need to improve, is embedded across our goal areas as well. So there's our math data, which, as Les also pointed out, I'm sure you've had an opportunity to look at, and our goal areas and further study for mathematics, which again, you'll see a lot of coherence across the goal areas between literacy, mathematics, and SEL for Lone Pine. So our points of pride, you'll see at the top, again, there's some of that coherence, looking to help teachers see the connections and be able to infuse within their curriculum and instruction our SEL goals, the work we're doing with the National Equity Project, the Anti-Defamation League, No Place for Hate program, our GET initiatives, and that all of that really needs to be part of the fabric of the curriculum and instructional decision-making that happens at the building. Those aspects of our work can't be a satellite to everything else we do. They need to be fully integrated. Our grade level collaborative team planning, this year we really shifted to a very strong professional learning focus where teachers were identifying goals as teams that were connected to our MICIP goals, becoming really focused on inquiry cycles of their own to improve their professional practice, doing some observations of each other's classrooms, and really having very directed, pointed conversations about what they were doing in the classrooms to improve student learning. So to support that, our IB teacher leader and our learning specialists have been attending those team plannings. They also come to our MICIP meetings and are really beginning to work closely with our teachers in using data much more proactively to inform and support their instruction. From the standpoint of our kids, we're really trying to include our students, even our littles, even our 5-year-olds, involved in our efforts around diversity, equity, and inclusion through our student action team, embracing the No Place for Hate efforts, and also connecting with what we're doing in our global ed team. And finally, we just held our first ever whole school student-led conferences, which were just a tremendous success. I know we had a lot of teachers very nervous about how those were going to go, but the efforts that we've made across the year to really embrace student ownership and agency really paid off, and they were really thrilled to see how well the kids did. And I think the parents were pretty astounded, too, at how well the kids were able to articulate and reflect on their own learning. Okay. Eastover. Harleen.
Thank you. Good evening. So I know Dr. Hilberry and Dr. Sharon gave a really nice overview of how we look at the data and what stories we take out of those. So I'm just going to go quickly through this again. MSTEP, I think, is more of a systematic approach. You can see we have that upward trend from year to year. We used to look at NWEA. We talked about FastBridge, we'll talk about in the next slide. For Fontes and Pinnell, very typical of what we usually see. We see a little bit of a dip in the fall coming out from the summer, but then, throughout the year, we can, hit hard on our literacy instruction, and you can see that uptick again. Something that we did talk about at our grade level team meetings when we looked at the data, Dr. Sharon talked about this a little bit. There was so much concern about that learning loss and so much concern about what students are losing and what they're missing out on. But our data really indicates that that is not accurate. We came in hard, and we knew that we had to focus on our literacy and our mathematics, and the data reflects that. There really is no learning loss, and so I think that's something that we take a lot of pride in, because I think that's something that educators are really facing, and so this is something that we do celebrate at our building level, and I think at the district level as well. FastBridge, again, this is a newer assessment for us. We did look at NWEA, so I think we're really unpacking some of the standards, the benchmarks, and what the data looks like. We're excited to see what spring brings. As Dr. Sharon mentioned, I think, next year when we come in, it'd be nice to have our spring data as well, because I think that gives the full picture. So taking all of that into account, we really do have data conversations in our buildings, and sometimes that looks like grade level meetings. Sometimes that looks, just recently we did a vertical meeting, so we had representatives from kindergarten to 3rd grade, and really looking at the data and talking about the story and the trends that we see, so the successes and the areas of deficiencies. And I think that really paints a really meaningful picture at how do we target those the deficiencies that we see, but also the strengths, and celebrate those strengths. So as we had conversations, we heard a lot about the Phonics program that we are implementing. We're piloting this year, and we're really going to kick off strong next year. So we did find that that was a need. We're really excited that we have that program, and teachers are loving it. They are really seeing the difference when they're doing the classroom assessments, informal conversations with their students. They're really seeing the impact of that phonics instruction. So we're really thankful that we do have that program in place. And then also really targeted instruction. So thinking about the individual conferencing, the small group instruction, that really supports our learners and meeting them where they are. So we look at the data, and we really do try to think about, okay, where are our students? And yes, we're gonna give that wide cast as a classroom instruction, but really thinking about how do we support and target instruction in our small group instruction. So here's for math, similar type of trends that we talked about. FastBridge is here as well. And then our takeaways. We know that students learn best when they have that hands-on ability to play with manipulatives, regardless of your math skill, whether you're a high learner or you need more support. Regardless of your age level, that hands-on math support is really helps to support those foundational skills. So that's something that our team is going to continue to implement in our lessons. The small group instruction, like we said, similar to literacy, we see that in mathematics as well. This last bullet point is something a little bit newer, and we're starting to have some more of these conversations when they're building. So I came before many of you several years ago talking about our math program, and that was a vehicle of math instruction. We knew that that was the curriculum. That's what we were going to kind of base our day-to-day lessons. But we also knew beyond that we had to talk about good mathematical practices in instruction. And so, yes, COVID came, and yes, like Dr. Haleberry mentioned, some of the professional learning that we wanted to do with teachers kind of put on hold, but the conversations were still there. We still knew that with this mathematics curriculum, we still needed to talk about good math instructions. So some of the conversations that we've been recently having and looking to continue into next year is really trying to find natural intersections between the portrait of the learner, standards for mathematical practices and vision, and just really rich instructional strategies. So as we meet as grade level teams, really thinking about, so we have this curriculum in front of us. We know that this is what we're using, but what type of instructional practices can we implement to really elevate our curriculum? So those are conversations that we're excited to have. Obviously, having a little bit of math background, that excites me as well. So these are conversations that we're going to continue on for next year as well. Points of pride, my favorite slide. We're really proud of what happens in our schools. Our district is doing great. Our schools are doing wonderful. Teachers are thriving. Students are doing an amazing job. So I think it's really important for us to think about, yes, data, numbers, that's all important, but think about how that impacts what we see on a day-to-day basis. So as we mentioned, we do have our MICIP meetings, and in years past, we would have like we'd have a school improvement plan and we'd have a district improvement plan. And sometimes it just felt like there were so many balls up in the air. And so what I've appreciated now is really having that collaborative approach to, we're all working together. We have a similar goal, we have a similar plan, so the conversations are similar. So I feel like we're moving forward in the same direction. And so we're continuing to having those conversations. We have a great cohort of people that come to our MICIP meetings, and we take that back to our building levels. The data stories, like we mentioned, we don't want data to be the four-letter word for our teachers. We really want them to use the data and think about their day-to-day instruction, so we continue to have those conversations within our buildings. Visible thinking instructional practices, this is nothing new. We're continuing to implement that to really scaffold students' learning and further their thinking dispositions. Continuing the implementation of Envision 2.0 and the Calkins units. And then continued conversations with our students and staff and our community. I think that's the biggest part that we are trying to do in Eastover, is really getting our parents involved in these conversations with equity, inclusion, our SEL work, and we're really excited about this kickoff for No Place for Hate. We're starting to meet with our students group and really trying to get our community involved in that. And last but absolutely not least, creating a really strong sense of community and partnership with our families, because we know that that's where our strength is going to come from when we partner with our families. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Phillips.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to join you tonight. And, as my colleagues talked about our data, here's our data at Conan Elementary School. Obviously, we are on a growth trend, but I'm excited to talk to you more about how teachers look at data, how they create teacher efficacy. Dr. Sharon had mentioned that. We know research shows that teacher efficacy is a driving force for student achievement. So we have to take data, look at it, and talk about continuous cycles of improvement, and how do we do that. And so, this year, as the teachers at Conan Elementary School looked at Fastbridge, Fontes, and Pinnell MSTEP results, really took a look at where can we come together as a team to examine an inquiry process around student achievement and learning. So the teachers really focused on some targeted goals, and one of them was literacy instruction, making sure that our instruction and literacy supports all of the students in our classroom, that it's not one way of instruction, but approaching it in a very differentiated approach, and then coming back in different cycles to talk about how those changes and shifts they made in their grade levels affected their students. And so we apply a well-rounded literacy balanced approach in our classrooms, phonics instruction, comprehension, fluency. All of those components are very important. Teachers in the classrooms focus on those through the year. As my colleague said, we're very excited to move forward with K2 Phonics Program as well. and really leaning back into the practice of conferring and small group work, one-on-one work with our students in the classrooms. We know that that trust and that relationship that is built with students in the classroom when you are conferring and working with them individually is really a driving force in student achievement, not only academically, but socially, emotionally as well. Teachers took actions in their classrooms. We worked a lot about thinking around multi-tiered systems of support. When you're thinking of Tier 2 or Tier 3 students who are receiving supports outside of the classroom, what are we doing also inside of the classroom to support those students? How are we double dipping, supporting them in the room and also outside of the room? So we are on a journey to really take a look at how our building and our teachers are shifting their instruction at time to support all of the students in their classroom. And really, we're very dedicated in all of our buildings to professional learning opportunities. What does that look like for labs in the building, providing teachers, new teachers, opportunities to shadow other teachers in the building, having our learning specialists come into the classroom to model best practices. We're on a journey of further studying that as well, because that continuous cycle of improvement can't happen once or twice a year looking at data, but it has to be a continuous process, 3, 4, 5 times a year, where we're giving our teachers time to come together and to talk and to passionately move some of their goals forward. Oops, sorry. So here is our math data as well. Teachers came together multiple times this year to take a look at, obviously, MSTEP and FastBridge. And really, our focus has been, again, on small group instruction. And more importantly, how do we invite all students to the conversation every day? Many math students look at math instruction as I can do it or I can't do it. One of the journeys we're on is in engaging students in what are called math talks, where we're talking and having inquiry processes around problems that they can have voice in, right? And there's no wrong answer to the start of each of our math lessons each day. That's an important focus that all of the classroom teachers are doing. And some of the actions they took for that was to invest and use manipulatives and visuals to clearly state goals for all of their students each day during math instruction. Building best practices throughout our building and collaborating with one another. Not only do we want to provide students with that opportunity to talk and to inquire about the mathematics instruction, we want the teachers to as well. So we are passionately moving forward with continuing to give teachers that opportunity to come together. And also, points of pride, the staff continues to invest their time in the instruction and the curriculum in the district, Teachers College, Readers and Writers Workshop, literacy and reading practices. We are engaging in student-led conferences as well, really building relationships with families, students, and teachers all together, driving the goal through the year and meeting at multiple times to talk about the progress. And our student action team is really part of our International Baccalaureate PYP program. Our students come together to talk about passionately what they can do to make a difference in our school, and they are really creating lasting change in our building. And to follow up, we're going to have, I believe, Dr. Sharon come up and wrap us up.
I wrote the slide, you guys approved it. Okay, I'll wrap up the last slide. I just want to show a thumbs. Who went the longest? It wasn't me, right? Because Keith's looking at me. All right. I went fast. Okay. Our last slide here is we really wanted to talk, and why we kind of want to do this together is one of the things that I realized very early when I got here, nobody mentioned during the interview process, was the construction, the changes, the moving in the catchment and all those areas. And what we know is that one of the things that struck us, we're in for some major change. There's no doubt about it. Our neighborhood class are changing, where they're going to school, our structures of our schools. Some of us are adding a grade level, some are adding 2 grade levels. And one other thing I think that we all acknowledge, the 4 of us, is that we are so delighted to have the opportunity to work together. This is a really good bunch of professionals I'm standing up here with right now, and they are strong in ways I've never been. And, we want to, so glad that we're getting away from 4 individual schools with 4 individual cultures and 4 individual approaches. And now we're getting to the point where no, there's not just going to be Way Elementary or East Hills Elementary. It's going to be Bloomfield Hills Elementary Schools. And we're a team on that. So what we wanted to talk about today is our goal for us, the 4 of us, was really working on building that culture of partnership between our schools. Leaders, their number one job is to bridge the boundaries within organizations. The superintendent's number one job is to bridge the boundary between the community and the district. That's what they do. Our jobs, a great job of being a building principal is you help bridge the boundary between parents in the building, kids and the teachers, district, but also the boundaries between our 4 schools and how are we going to bridge those, make those permeable and be a team. So that's one of our goals. And so, we want to make sure we're building our capacities and taking on the strengths from each other. I think I'll touch a little bit on it, our next steps is we really want to start developing what we talked a little bit about using data and the data we have and really using that in a way that we can come up with these enactments through the district leadership and through all of our buildings that we can actually try new things, be brave, be pioneers, not settlers, and really try to push ourselves and how we're going to use data to make sure we're on the right track. Collective efficacy, collective success, collective risk. But our goal for the 4 of our campuses is that word collective. We want to make sure that we are looking at, embracing the challenges that affected schools face. Right? There are specific challenges for schools that have high achievement success rates. You've seen the data today. Most of our state requirements and systems and stuff are built on helping schools that are struggling and at risk to get better. There are specific challenges to high-performing schools unique to them, 2 of which is access to equity, making sure that all learners have that opportunity for that success. Second one is defining what success really is. And we're not going to be able to do that unless we made the steps we outlined tonight. And so these are the things that we really feel that we want to work on as a team. And we also want to spend some time looking at other successful schools and districts. What do we have to learn from those relevant counterfactuals? Those schools with our demographics, those schools with our resource allocation, those schools with leadership that can tell us things that confirm things that we are doing that are outstanding, we should continue, and maybe look at ways that we can change too. But that's got to be all 4 of us together through that process as a district team. So that's the end of our presentation. And the draft starts in like 13 minutes, so I'm not going to say no.